Hey, good evening. Here we are at Cleveland Community Chapel. We're ready for our evening studies here on Sunday night. Chapter 5 of 2 Samuel as we continue the saga of David, who's finally made king tonight over the entire southern and northern kingdoms here. So, due to the death in last week's chapter, I guess it was, of Saul's son. So that brings a whole new situation. Israel was kind of having a fight over which son was going to be king, and they was playing who can squeeze into the throne game, I guess. So then came all the tribes of Israel, verse 1, chapter 5. Then came all the tribes of Israel, all the northern kingdom, and to David and said unto Hebron, which Hebron's where the capital was for David at this time. And they spake and said, Behold, we are your bone and your flesh. We're all one family here. Also in time past, they recognized when Saul was king over us, before he was killed, thou wast he, you were the one that led us out and brought us in Israel. And you're the one that the Lord said to you, you'll feed my people Israel, and you'll be captain over Israel. So all the elders of Israel came to the king in Hebron, and King David made a deal with them in Hebron before the Lord. They got God involved with their deal. And they anointed David king over Israel. It's about the third time I think David's been anointed now, but everybody's recognizing him now as the true king over Israel. And chapter 5, verse 4 makes the point that David was 30 years old at this time. Interesting is that Jesus was 30 years old when he began his ministry and he was becoming our great high priest at the age of 30. That was a requirement. They had to be 30 to be a high priest. So David was 30 when he began to reign. And he reigned for 40 years. So from 30 to 70, David was king over Israel. And verse 5 says, in Hebron he reigned 7.5 years, 7 years, 6 months. And in Jerusalem he reigned 33 years for a total of 40 over all Israel and Judah. That last 33.5 years. So he's been 7.5 just over Judah, see. And the king and his men, they went to Jerusalem. Remember the Jebusites had moved in, was living in the land around Jerusalem now. So they've got these people, these squatters there. It's supposed to be Israel's land. The king and his men, they went to Jerusalem unto the Jebusites, who were the inhabitants of the land, which spake unto David. The Jebusites spoke to David, said, you ain't coming in here. Except you take away the blind and the lame, you'll not come in hither. Thinking David can't come in hither. I think that was there's a translation thing here I've been trying to read. I mean, what they keep meaning with the blind and the lame is it sounds like the Jebusites were saying, you can't even whoop the blind and the lame people. You ain't coming in here. Nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion. The same is the city of David, Jerusalem. And David said on that day, whosoever gets up to the gutter, translation problem there again looks like maybe the aqueduct or something of the city, whoever gets there first and smites the Jebusites, the lame and the blind. I think David was playing on words again, calling them all that bunches, the lame and the blind, that are the Jebusites that are hated of David's soul. Whoever can do that, whoever can get in there and takes that place, that stronghold, he'll be the chief and captain. Wherefore they said, the blind and lame shall not come into the house. So David dwelt in the fort, and he called it the city of David. And David built around from Millo and inward. He's building his stronghold now. And David went on, and he grew great. And most importantly, the Lord of hosts was with him. Now, he begins to get basically recognized internationally by other countries now. And here's Hiram, verse 11, who's the king of the nation of Tyre. So Hiram, who's the king of Tyre, he sends messengers to David. He's sending ambassadors to him. And he says, we want to build you a nice house, David. You've taken Jerusalem, so we're going to send carpenters and masons and cedar trees and build the king a beautiful house. Cedar trees and carpenters and masons, they built David a house. And David perceived that the Lord had established him king over Israel. He knew that God was in this and that he had exalted his kingdom, God had, for his people Israel's sake. Verse 13. David, as kings back in that day, this wasn't exactly God's plan. I think this is against Mosaic law, but David just keeps expanding his harem because that's what kings did back then. That was a prestige, who would have the biggest harem. And David's getting all these new concubines now, and he has 11 more kids from them. So David took him more concubines, verse 13, and wives out of Jerusalem after he was come from Hebron. And there were yet sons and daughters born to David, and here's the names of them. These be the names of those that were born unto him in Jerusalem. He's already got a bunch of kids, but here comes a bunch more. Shammua, Shobab, Nathan, and Solomon. That's the one you want to remember because our story will continue through him, David's son Solomon. Ibhar also, and Elishua, and Nepheg, and Japhia, and Elishama, and Eliada, and Eliphalet. Be hard to call them all to dinner for me, wouldn't it? But when the Philistines heard that they had anointed David king over all Israel, all the Philistines, they came up to seek David. And David heard of it and went down to the hold and to the stronghold. So he's heard now the Philistines have invaded the land now that I'm king. So David goes into the stronghold and he seeks the Lord. He's doing the right thing here. Every time before he goes into battle, he goes and talks to God about it. The Philistines came and they spread themselves. The whole ground was spread with the army of the Philistines in the valley of Rephaim. And David inquired of the Lord. It means he went and prayed about this. And he asked the Lord, shall I go up to the Philistines? Wilt thou deliver them into my hand? And the Lord said to David, go up, for I'll doubtless deliver the Philistines into your hand. And David came to a place called Baal Perazim, and David smote them there. That's where he won the battle. And he said, here's where the name comes from. It's a historical note of how Baal Perazim got its name. It's because David went there and fought against the Philistines. And then David said, the Lord's broken forth upon my enemies before me as the breach of waters. Therefore, David, he called the name of the place Baal Perazim, which means the Lord's broken forth upon my enemies before me as a breach of waters. And there they left their images, I guess as the Philistines' images, and they burned them. And the Philistines came up yet again, and they spread themselves in the valley of Rephaim. The whole ground's covered with another group of Philistines. And David inquired of the Lord again. He said, this time, though, the Lord said, thou shalt not go up. Don't go and fight it like you did this last time, but fetch a compass. That means circle around behind them. Fetch a compass, circle around behind them, and come up on them over against the mulberry trees. We're going to attack a rear attack here. And let it be. Now God says, now you wait on me. You wait on me. When you hear the sound of the going in the tops of the mulberry tree, when you hear that wind blowing through the tops of the mulberry tree, that's God's sign that says, I'm with you. I'm leading you into battle now. Then you'll bestir yourself. For then shall the Lord go out before thee to smite the host of the Philistines. And David did so, as the Lord had commanded him, and he smote the Philistines from Geba until they come over to Gaza. So the point of that last part is, I think, for you and I as Christian people is, hey, we fight battles while we're down here, but we need to be careful that we're not running in front of the Lord. I don't know what the sign is, but you got to pray. You got to inquire of the Lord to realize that you're doing the right thing, and then. I wish it was as easy as we could just wait till the wind blowing in the willow trees, in the mulberry trees, but it ain't always that easy. But still, you need to realize that, hey, am I following God into this battle, or am I running ahead of Him? And that requires prayer and discernment. See you next time.